The wholesale price of Napa cabbage has exceeded 25,000 won for 10 kilograms, or more than 160% from just a month ago, as agricultural prices are surging due to heavy downpours and intense heat waves experienced last month.
지난달 폭우와 폭염으로 농산물 가격이 급등하면서 배추 도매 가격이 10kg당 25,000원을 넘어 한 달 전보다 160% 이상 올랐습니다. 자, 그래요. 표현부터 좀 살펴볼 텐데요. The first expression to look at is to exceed something.
Yeah, when you exceed something, you go beyond what is expected. So you could say if, sometimes on tests, they have bonus questions.
Oh, yeah?
And sometimes, because of those bonus questions, you can even exceed 100% on your test. Because if you get the bonus question, you actually got 26 out of 25. You're doing better than expected.
Yeah.
So in this case, in the article, we're saying that the prices exceeded 25,000 won. So it wasn't just 25,000 won. No. It is even more than 25,000 won. And let me just further say that the reason that we use this, instead of giving you the exact price, which I think is 25,760 won, is often in North American or English articles, journalists, rather than giving the exact number down to the one, you'll usually round up or round down, and then use words like exceeded or over or more than, just to make it easier to listen to.
Exactly. And the same goes for Korean news as well, because instead of saying 25,760원, because then the listener's going to go, what? With the headlines at least, it's common to make it sound as simple and concise and as catchy as possible, really.
Exactly. Because the important number here is that it is over 25,000. It's not the last three numbers don't matter as much as the first two.
그렇죠. 이거 뉴스를 작성하는 방법까지도 선생님이 약간 팁을 주셨는데, 보통 이게 헤드라인스 작성할 때는 우리가 최대한 심플하게 듣는 사람으로 하여금, 라디오니까 그냥 한 번에 어느 정도 감이 탁 잡히게끔 해야 되기 때문에 구체적인 숫자 하나 열거 하는 것보다는 뭐를 넘었다, 뭐 이 정도 됐다, 이렇게 말을 하는 게 훨씬 이해하기가 쉽죠. 그래서 25,000원 이상이다 라는 얘기를 하면서 it has exceeded 25,000 won. Now, normally when something exceeds expectations, it's good. But in this case, the prices are going higher and higher. Depending on which side you're looking at this from, if you're the farmer, this would be good. If you're the consumer, not so good.
Yeah. And like you said, I think exceeded expectations are often used together, because when you are exceeding something, there is an expectation that is in place, and that's what it is exceeding. So it may be like a new person, maybe you recommended a friend for a job, and you talk to the boss and say, oh, by the way, how was my friend in the... You know what? She exceeded expectations. She was even better than I thought she was going to be.
기대 이상이다 라는 뜻으로 예상을 뛰어넘을 때 exceed expectations라고 하고요. 그렇게 이제 많이 씁니다. 같이 붙여서. 자, 그럼 다음 표현 볼게요. surge.
Surge. Yeah, surging is when something comes in a sudden and large amount. We often hear this term with electricity. There was a power surge in the electricity, which maybe brought down the power. Maybe there was a power outage. The electricity went out in the building, and maybe it was because there was a power surge. So all of a sudden, too much energy was coming through the line, and it blew a fuse, and therefore the power in the building went out in order to make sure that a fire didn't start in the actual building. So that's usually why those things happen. But usually it's because of a power surge. All of a sudden you're getting a lot of something quickly and suddenly.
I'm sure there was a power surge in many households this past month because it's so hot outside, and a lot of people have been keeping their ACs on all night.
I have.
So yeah, that's why a lot of people are now very worried about how high the bills are going to be at the end of the month. I'm worried as well because I've been turning my AC on all day, full blast, over the past couple of weeks. So we will see. But surge, to
Yeah.
go up.
You can also see this quite a bit in business talk or maybe the stock market. Prices might have surged in stocks. In a particular stock, it might have gone up suddenly in a day. I think in Korea, for instance, I think 10 or 12% is a very big day. So if stock prices even went up, say, 6 or 7%, you can say, the prices surged 7% rather than just went up 7%. That's boring.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want boring expressions, especially with numbers. 그래요. 경제 뉴스에서는 정말 이 올라갔다, 내려갔다를 뜻하는 뭐 급등이나 뭐 하락이나 이런 표현들이 아주 많죠. 그 중에 하나가 이제 급증, surge가 될 텐데요. 이 이미지상으로 설명을 드리자면은 에너지 사용량이 이렇게 확 올랐을 때 마치 파도가 확 밀려오는 것 같은 그런 느낌입니다. surge.
The number of children and adolescents seeking medical attention for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, has skyrocketed by more than 80% in 4 years.
주의력 결핍 및 과잉 행동 장애, 일명 ADHD로 병원을 찾은 어린이와 청소년 환자가 4년 새 80% 이상 급증한 것으로 나타났습니다. Again, we could say surge here.
Yep, instead of skyrocket.
Yeah. So let's look at that word first then.
Yeah, when I think a surge, I think of like a big lump that's kind of going, it's going through. Where skyrocket, I think of something that's just powerfully continuing to go up stronger and stronger, like a rocket. So you can use them interchangeably to a certain degree, but I think the image is slightly different. But they do certainly both mean like a sudden, powerful movement in one direction. Skyrocket, we definitely think about stock market. When you back in the old days, we used to use, that stock is going to skyrocket. But I've noticed nowadays, there's like a new term that people use these days. They'll say, it's going to the moon.
Really?
Yeah, they'll say like, especially, I remember hearing this a lot when Bitcoin first became a thing, people kept saying Bitcoin is going to the moon.
Skyrocket, it doesn't even come close.
Exactly. Skyrocket, it only goes, skyrocket, that's just going out of the atmosphere, but the moon is way even further. So yeah, I hear that a lot more lately, the modern talk of the younger generation on how they talk about things going up suddenly in the stock market.
Exactly. And all of these verbs, you can have that image in your head. It's useful to memorize it together when you try to learn these words. The next expression is to seek medical attention.
Yeah, when you're seeking something, you're looking for or searching for something. And I think the most common way that we hear this, especially when we were kids, was the game we play hide and seek. Yeah. One person hides and the other person seeks them. They search, they look for them. They're looking for the person who is hiding. So more children and adolescent kids these days are searching for, seeking medical attention. And medical attention certainly is medical. We talk about medicine and the medical industry, doctors, those type of people. And attention, of course, we need some help. We need people to actually look at you, to give you some time. And it is the medical people that we are looking for. So, these kids, there are more of them these days that require attention in the ADHD realm.
Exactly. So hide and seek, 숨바꼭질처럼 seek는 뭔가를 찾다의 의미가 있을 수 있습니다. 아프니까 전문가의 도움을 찾는 느낌으로 이해하시면 되겠고요. 그 다음에 medical attention이라는 것은 의학적인 돌봄이에요. 그러니까 역시나 이제 전문가의 돌봄, 도움 이런 것들이 필요하다라는 느낌으로 쓰는 표현입니다. seek medical attention을 하나의 이제 구문으로 봤을 때 의학적인 이제 치료를 받게 된다, 병원을 찾는다 이렇게 보면 되겠습니다.
The death toll from the wildfires on the Hawaiian island of Maui has surpassed 90, with warnings that it could rise further as authorities confirm that the Lahaina fire is now the deadliest in the U.S. in over 100 years.
하와이 마우이 섬의 산불로 인한 사망자가 90명을 넘어선 가운데 이 숫자가 앞으로 더 늘어날 수도 있다는 경고가 나왔습니다. 관계 당국은 이번 라하이나 화재가 100여 년 만에 미국 최악의 산불이라고 밝혔습니다. 자, 사망자 수가요, 계속 늘어날 수도 있다라는 표현 여기서는 이렇게 말하고 있습니다. It, that's the death toll, could rise further.
Yeah, and further meaning more, and rise meaning going up. So therefore, it could go up more, is what it's saying. It could rise further. The number of people who have passed because of this fire,
Yeah.
it could go up more, that number.
네, 더 많아질 수도 있다라는 거. It could rise further라고 하고요. 그 사망자 수가 더 커질 수도 있다는 얘기죠. 실제로 AP통신에 의하면은 이제 한 30분 전에 93명으로 집계된다고 합니다. This is the deadliest wildfire that the US has seen in over a century.
Yeah, 100 years. The deadliest. Of course, when we add EST to the end of something, then it is the most, or we're talking about a superlative of some sort. And this being the deadliest, it is the most deadly. The most people have died ever over the last 100 years because of a fire. And they're using the word, in this case, the deadliest.
With most words, you can say, something EST, and it would be the most of something. But there are some exceptions, and I can't think of some right now, but I'll come up with some later. But yeah, deadliest, happiest, scariest, what else? Loneliest. There you go. 가장 뭐뭐뭐하다 할 때 이렇게 많이 쓰죠. 자, 여기서는 the deadliest가 이제 사망자에 대한 얘기니까 가장 치명적인이라는 의미가 되겠습니다.
Florida Representative Greg Steube, a Republican, has filed articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden over claims the commander-in-chief helped his son Hunter commit crimes and cover them up.
미국 공화당 소속 플로리다주 하원 의원인 그레그 스투비는 조 바이든 대통령이 자신의 아들 헌터의 범죄를 돕고 이를 은폐했다는 의혹을 들며 그에 대한 탄핵소추안을 발의했습니다. 탄핵소추안, 여기서 이제 탄핵이라는 단어를 볼게요. Impeachment.
Yeah, impeachment is an official word where you're basically trying to get an elected official or a government official out of their position. And the first time I remember hearing this term was through the Clinton trials when Bill Clinton was under trial for his behavior during his presidency. So in both these cases, I guess you could say that you have a person that's in a very important public position where they're representing the public, and because of an allegation that they may have done something wrong, it's possible that they could essentially be replaced or fired from their position.
Exactly. Impeachment가 탄핵이 되겠습니다. 탄핵 소추안은 이제 맥락에 따라서 딱한 단어로 쓰기보다는 그때그때 좀 다르게 표현할 수 있고요. motion이라는 단어를 넣지 않아도 여기서 그냥 이제 탄핵 소추안의 의미를 가지고 있다고 볼 수 있을 것 같아요. 자, 그다음에는 commander-in-chief가 president를 여기서 말하고 있는 거죠?
Yeah, in this particular case, it means the president. Commander, you're basically saying you're in control or you're in power of a military force is usually what they're referring to. So the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military is also that of the president. So it's sort of a nickname that it is an official term as well, but they'll use that because you don't want to say president every time. It becomes redundant. So there's different words that you're going to use to represent the president. And in this particular case, they're using commander-in-chief, meaning that you command the American military.
이제 국군 통수권자를 말하는데요. 비유적으로도 쓸 수 있습니다. 지금 여기서 가장 이제 그 큰 리더십 롤을 가지고 있는 사람이라는 뜻으로 쓸 수도 있는데 여기서는 구체적으로 대통령을 지칭하고 있습니다.
Yeah, and a commander as well. Like we have a U.S. Armed Forces commander in Korea. There's a general here, and he is in charge. He's the commander of the Korean forces or the forces in Korea, which means he's the one that gives the order. He commands, and everyone listens to him.
Right.
Son Heung-min has been named the captain of Tottenham Hotspurs, taking over from goalkeeper Hugo Lloris, who had first captained the Spurs in the 2014-2015 season.
손흥민 선수가 2014-2015 시즌부터 주장을 맡아온 골키퍼 위고 요리스의 뒤를 이어 소속팀 토트넘 헛스퍼의 주장으로 임명됐습니다. 먼저 축하드립니다. Take over.
Congratulations.
네, 이 표현부터 좀 볼까요?
Yeah, when you take over for someone, you succeed them. Somebody had a position before or was responsible for something before, but now you're taking over. You're now taking over that role or that responsibility from the person before you.
무언가를 이제 인계받는다라는 의미인데 역할을 물려받는 거죠. Take over. 그래서
Exactly.
그 전에 이제 주장의 그것을 이제 그 역할을 이제 손흥민 선수가 이제는 가져가게 됐다. 뭐 이런 느낌으로 take over라고 할 수 있습니다. 뭐 제치다 이런 의미가 될 수도 있지만요. And then captain is captain, but here it's used as a verb.
Yeah, and you can be a captain as a noun, but in this particular case, as you mentioned, you're captaining. So the process of being the captain, and they mentioned that he is the new captain. He's also the first Asian captain ever, I believe, in the English Premier League.
Wow.
And of course, he's also the captain of Korea's national team, which is, I think, one of the reasons that they kind of suggested that he become the captain is because of his responsibilities with the Korean national team as well.
Interesting thing about the word Asian in the UK, when people say Asian, they refer to people of Indian heritage.
Oh, really?
And so anyone from our part of the world, they would say East Asian. But I know what you're talking about because we just say we're Asian. However, in the UK, they have a slightly different definition of what is Asian.
The Education Ministry has unveiled a revised law proposal aimed at safeguarding teachers' classroom authority, which includes immunity for teachers facing unfounded child abuse charges related to discipline, provided there is no willful misconduct or gross negligence involved.
네, 교육부는 교사가 학생 지도를 하는 과정에서 고의나 중대한 과실이 없으면 아동학대 범죄에서 면책받을 수 있는 방안이 포함된 교권, 교육활동 보호를 강화하기 위한 법령 개정안을 발표했습니다. 자, 그러면 일단 표현부터 좀 볼게요. 교권 보호 할 때 이 보호하다 뭐 protect 써도 괜찮은데요. safeguard라는 표현이 나왔습니다.
Protect. As
Same
you just
thing.
said, yeah, if you safeguard something, you're doing it to protect somebody, protect people.
그렇죠. Safeguarding, protecting means essentially the same thing. In this case, we're talking about the teacher's classroom authority and protecting that. What about gross negligence?
So this is a legal term. So this is a very, very serious failure to take care of the people or the things that you're responsible for in your position. So for example, so it's a very seriously careless act. So if I was going to give an example, this could be like a doctor who amputated the wrong limb on a patient, or a business that sold a product that they knew was harmful. That all could be considered gross negligence.
그렇죠. 이 negligence라는 게 이제 과실, 뭔가 잘못한 것이고요. gross는 아주 많이, 크게, 심각하게 이런 의미가 있기 때문에 중대 과실이 되겠습니다. gross negligence, 법률 용어죠.
A lioness was shot dead in Goryeo County on Monday, an hour after escaping a private farm that prompted a search operation involving police officers and fire department personnel, according to local officials.
어제 경북 고령군 한 민간 목장에서 키우던 암사자가 탈출했다가 1시간여 만에 관계 당국에 의해 사살됐습니다. Now, once authorities found out that a lioness had escaped, there was a search operation.
Operation in this case just means a planned activity, I guess that's the best way to say it, an action.
Yeah. Different to an operation in a hospital.
Yes, different from an operation in a hospital. It's like when there's a plan, there are many people involved, and there's an objective.
Yes.
Right? So in this case, it's to find something, to search for something.
Exactly.
So if there was a missing person, there could be a search operation as well.
그렇죠. 여기서 말하는 search operation은 이 사자에 대한 이제 뭐 수색 작업, 뭐 탐색 작업 이런 정도가 되겠죠. 그런데 때에 따라서는 구조 작업이라는 의미로 search and rescue를 줄여서 그냥 search operation이라고 할 수도 있습니다. 그때 이제 만약에 사람들이 실종이 됐다든지 이랬을 때는 search operation의 의미가 좀 다르게 해석이 되고요.
I wish it was a search and rescue. I wish they rescued this lioness.
No, but
I
they
hate this
searched
story.
and shot
I know.
the lion. 이번에는 이제 그 암사자를 찾아내는 그런 search operation이었고요.
If you like lions, don't look at the pictures. I wish I didn't.
It's very sad. 자, 그리고 이 operation이라는 단어가 병원에서 쓸 때는 수술이라는 뜻도 되죠. What about fire department personnel? A lot of people actually were involved in the operation.
Yeah, there was some like about 150 police officers, hunters, and fire department personnel just means people who work for that organization. So in this case, fire department personnel, firefighters, and people who work for the fire department. Like other articles said, police department personnel. You could also say that as well.
그렇죠. fire department가 소방서가 되겠고요. personnel 그러면 요원 관련된 인물들을 말하는데 여기서 이제 소방대원들이겠죠. Police officers and fire department personnel. 100명 이상 이렇게 해서 굉장히 많은 분들이 총동원됐습니다.
A bus accident in Mexico has claimed the lives of 7 people and injured at least 13, prompting the Korean embassy in Mexico to issue alerts urging Korean residents and tourists to avoid taking long-distance buses.
멕시코에서 장거리 이동버스 사고로 7명이 숨지고 최소 13명이 다쳤습니다. 해당 지역의 버스 사고가 빈번하게 발생해 주 멕시코 한국대사관은 한국인 여행객과 교민의 장거리 이동버스 이용 자제를 권고했습니다. 자, 먼저 이 표현부터 좀 보고 싶은데요. To prompt someone to do something.
That's what causes you to do it. So A prompts you to do B. So in this case, there was this accident, but there's been several over the last couple months. So finally, the Korean embassy has said, okay, we need to issue an alert here.
그죠? 하게 만들다, 뭐뭘 촉발하다라는 뜻이에요. 그래서 prompt A to do B. 보통 이런 구조로 많이 쓰이는데 prompt the Korean embassy in Mexico to issue alerts. 그래서 이제 교민과 그다음에 한국인 여행객들에게 이렇게 하세요라고 권고를 하도록 한 여러 사건들이 있었습니다. 그 중에서 이제 최근에 그 장거리 이동 버스 사고 그 동안에도 꽤 여러 번 일어났거든요. 이거는 잠시 후에 더 얘기해 보고요. The next expression is urging someone to do something.
So that's what these alerts did. They've urged Korean residents or any tourists to try not to take these long distance buses. So it's not a city bus. It's those big buses that go from city to city. So if you urge someone to do something, you strongly advise them to do or not to do that thing.
그렇죠.
It's like a strong recommendation.
맞아요. Strong recommendation, 강력하게 권고하는 겁니다. Urging someone to do something. 이렇게 부디 하시라 아니면 하지 마시라 이렇게 urging을 할 수 있습니다.
California police have reported that a mob of criminals ransacked a high-end retail store in Los Angeles in broad daylight on Saturday, stealing up to $100,000 worth of merchandise.
캘리포니아 경찰은 대낮에 떼강도가 로스앤젤레스의 명품 매장을 습격해 최대 10만 달러 상당의 물건을 훔쳐 달아났다고 밝혔습니다. 네, 백주 대낮에 이런 일이 발생했어요. mob, 우리가 보통 뭐 flash mob 얘기하면은 갑자기 사람들이 나타나서 떼창을 부르고 singing together 뭐 이런 이제 좋은 flash mob도 있을 수 있지만 이거는 a mob of robbers, thieves. 갑자기 도둑들이 이렇게 나타나가지고 밤도 아니고요.
You can have a flash mob of singers? Is that what you said?
Yes, you can.
Is that like in the movie Grease or something like that when they all get together? That's what I...
There have been some viral videos where, you get people suddenly all singing K-pop together. In this case, it's a completely different kind of mob.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So what is it to ransack? What does that mean?
Ransack is when usually a bunch of people, I guess one person could do it, enter an area, enter a place, and with the intention of stealing things usually. and then causing a lot of damage. Because usually it's you're going through the place, tipping things over, breaking things to try and find valuables that you want to steal. But it's the idea that you're just going through it, knocking things down and causing a lot of damage.
Right, ransacking. 습격하고 뭔가 아수라장으로 만드는 것을 ransacking이라고 합니다. They ransacked a high-end retail store.
High-end just means luxury goods.
Yeah.
So a fancy, it's like going to Apgujeong and doing that or something, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't recommend doing.
No. 이 high-end라는 것이 이제 고급이라는 뜻이 있어요. 말 그대로 뭐 거의 직역이죠. high-end, 고급. 근데 이제 명품이라고 우리가 뭐 해석을 할 수 있을 것 같아요. 그런 retail store, 명품 매장을 ransack 했습니다.
A new study has shown that insects, which are increasingly recognized as a future source of animal feed, could be used as raw materials to make highly functional biodegradable plastic.
네, 미래 식량 사료 자원 등으로 주목받고 있는 곤충을 원료로 고기능성 바이오플라스틱을 만들 수 있다는 연구 결과가 나왔습니다. 자, a source of animal feed라는 표현부터 볼게요.
Animal feed, animal food.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just call it feed when it comes to for animals.
네, 사료를요, animal feed라고 부릅니다. 그래서 a source of animal feed라는 것은 이 사료의 어떤 원료로 쓸 수 있을 것 같다. Biodegradable?
If something's biodegradable, it can decay or decompose naturally without harming the environment.
생분해되는
Yeah,
거.
like if you have, like when I was a kid, we had a big compost basket or heap in our backyard.
Yeah.
And you put all the food garbage into that, and then it just decays and
Sure.
decomposes naturally.
Yeah, these days, the whole world is trying to be more eco-friendly. I've noticed cups that look like plastic, but it says biodegradable. So it's obviously not plastic.
The substance is different,
Yeah,
right?
so if you put it, if you were to bury it in the earth, then it would decompose. Yeah, it wouldn't stay there like plastic
Right.
does for hundreds and hundreds of years. 자, biodegradable, 생분해된다라는 뜻이에요. 자, 친환경적인 거죠.
The number of Koreans seeking debt restructuring in the first half of the year surpassed 90,000 as they failed to pay back their debts on time due to rising interest rates and a sluggish economy.
올해 상반기 금리 상승과 경기 침체로 빚을 갚지 못해 채무 조정을 신청한 사람이 9만 명을 넘어섰습니다. 채무 조정을 신청하다라는 표현부터 볼게요. Seek debt restructuring.
When you seek something, you look for it. You try to get that thing. Now, debt restructuring is when they have some debt, but they're obviously having problems repaying it, so they need it to be changed. So there's several things that can change. Maybe they're seeking one of them, maybe they're seeking a combination of these. So the main one would be trying to negotiate lower interest rates. That's a big one. The other one would be extending repayment terms, so you can pay back at a later date. The other one could be even reducing the entire debt load. And the reason for this is because people want to avoid default. And also the lending institutions, they want people to avoid default as well, because then they might not get anything, or they might only get, 20, 30, 40 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. To seek debt restructuring or to seek debt adjustment, 그러니까 이제 채무 조정을 신청하다예요. 여기서는 seek라는 것 자체는 뭔가를 찾다라서 뭔가를 추구하다 의미가 될 수도 있고, to seek help, for example.
Or a
뭐
job
이런 식으로.
seeker. We use that term a
seek
lot.
job, 그렇죠. job seeker 이렇게 일자리를 찾다 할 때도 많이 쓰기도 하는데, 자, 여기서 말하는 debt restructuring, 채무 조정이 뭔지까지 설명을 지금 간단하게 해주셨어요. 그러니까 뭐 상환 기간을 늘린다든지 이자율을 조정을 한다든지 아니면은 아예 좀 채무 돈 자체를 좀 감면을 하는 그런 것들을 다 채무 조정이라고 하죠. 근데 이제 아무나 할 수 있는 것은 아니고 정말 생활고 등으로 인해서 내가 너무나 빚을 갚기 힘든 상황이다라는 그런 상황이 이제 입증이 됐을 때 대출자를 위한 그런 채무 조정, debt restructuring, debt adjustment.
And debt restructuring isn't just for individual people. Companies can do this.
Right.
Governments have to do this a lot of the time too.
Right, exactly. And the next expression used here is people failed to pay back their debts.
Right, they weren't able to make their payments, their repayments. If you fail to do something, you're just not able to do it.
Right.
So they obviously just don't have enough money, enough cash flow to make their payments at all or on time. That was the other one. Some people just can't do it on time.
Yeah.
And these are a lot of the people are ones who had debt and were able to repay it in the past,
Yeah.
but things have taken a turn for the worse now, and now they're unable to do it or they're late.
그렇죠. People who had been able to pay back on time. 그동안에 굉장히 성실하게 상환을 해왔었던, 꼬박꼬박 빚을 잘 갚아왔었던 그런 대출자들조차도 최근에 들어서는 이제 갚지 못하는 여러 가지 그 생활고의 문제, 또 높은 이율의 문제 등등이 있을 수 있는데요. 그때 빚을 갚지 못했다. Fail to pay back your debt. 이렇게 표현을 합니다.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and members of his government and parliament observed the anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II on Tuesday with a visit or offering sent to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine.
기시다 후미오 일본 총리와 강요 국회의원들이 제2차 세계대전 패전일인 어제 야스쿠니 신사에 공물료를 내거나 참배했습니다. Okay, so first of all, to observe an anniversary, what does that mean? To look at it?
Yeah, it's usually what you'd think,
Yeah.
right? Because that's usually what observe means. You see something, you observe it.
I'm observing you right now.
Right, or you make an observation, right? Like, oh, Sue's wearing emerald earrings, like right, something
Yeah.
like that, right? You see something and then you mention it. But if you talk about observing an anniversary or a tradition, you either acknowledge it or even like celebrate it.
Yeah.
But it's tough to use the word celebrate in this case.
of
It's a little
course.
bit more like following a custom.
그러니까 원래 observe는 관찰하다잖아요. 뭔가 봤을 때. 그러나 어떤 기념일, 어떤 날짜에 대해서 observe가 나왔을 때는 그 기념일을 뭐 준수하다. 그 기념일을 기념한다. 때에 따라서는 뭐 좋은 거면은 뭐 축하한다의 의미가 될 수도 있는데 여기선 그건 아니고요. 그 기념일을 이러이러하게 보냈다. 이런 정도로 해석할 수 있습니다. So what did they do? They either went to the shrine or they sent offerings.
Yes, offerings. Something, some item that is offered. Like if you offer someone something, you give them something, right? Or you say, "Oh, I can give you this." Now, what do they give? A lot of times, I think it's flowers. In this case, I saw a picture that said he gave a flower. Something that is like a sign of respect
Right.
or to acknowledge the occasion.
존경을 표하는 무언가를 이제 보낼 때 영어로 an offering을 보냈다라고 얘기하거든요. 여기서는 이제 곡물을 말하고 있습니다.
A lot of times people give religious offerings
Sure.
at churches or things like that.
That's right. It could be in the form of money. in that
Sure,
case.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Former U.S. President Donald Trump and some of his closest confidants have been indicted on racketeering and conspiracy charges over efforts to reverse Trump's defeat in the 2020 presidential election in the state of Georgia.
도널드 트럼프 전 미국 대통령과 그의 측근이 2020년 미국 대선에서 조지아주 투표 결과를 뒤집으려는 압력을 행사한 혐의로 기소됐습니다. 네. 여기서 이제 트럼프 전 대통령과 그의 측근이라는 표현을 먼저 볼게요. His close confidants.
So a confidant is someone you can confide in. So if you confide in somebody, you can speak to them about private things,
Yeah.
tell them secrets. So that's what it's hard to call them friends, but like you could call your friend a confidant, a very close friend.
Yeah.
In this case, these are his most trusted associates.
Yeah, you might even say his aides as well. Maybe.
Sure, yeah, a lot of his lawyers,
Yeah.
people like that. It was I have a whole list. Actually, I just named a few here. His
Okay.
White House, his former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, as well as this person's also very famous, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who was his election lawyer.
Sure. 이런 측근들을 지금 얘기하고 있는데요. 뭐 굉장히 많이 리스팅이 되어 있습니다. His closest confidants. And the reason it's pronounced this way is because it comes from French. And so it's one of those odd pronunciations. It might look like confidant or something, but you don't pronounce it the English way in this case, more of the French way.
Right.
confidant 이렇게 발음하고요. 그 다음에는 이거 키워드인데 racketeering.
Yeah, so this racketeering, So there's federal laws and there's state laws, and they call them RICO, the RICO Acts. So it's Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations, RICO.
Okay.
So a racket is an illegal business that makes money. It's like a scheme. So that's what a racket is. Now, racketeering charges, they've been used to take down mafia bosses in the U.S.
Yeah.
So racketeering is when a group of individuals commit a series of crimes together, and it's part of an ongoing criminal organization, hence the term organized crime, which is another term for mafia.
Exactly. So we actually, in the past, we would see this with mafias, with gangsters, that sort of thing. With the former president.
Well, here's the thing: is the reason why mob bosses were prosecuted for these is because they were able to be prosecuted for crimes they didn't personally commit as well, because they were part of this ongoing part of this organization that was committing crimes on a regular basis.
Right.
And it's been used in many different ways. It was actually used in the state of Georgia. The same district attorney went after corrupt school board.
그래요.
teachers
여기서
of
말하는
school board.
그러니까 racketeering이라는 단어가 그래서 아주 핵심적인 단어입니다. 지금 이번 기소와 관련해서 외신에서 계속 나오고 있는 단어인데요. 불법적으로 돈을 버는 그런 마피아들이 하는 것들도 이렇게 표현이 되고요. racketeering. 어떤 조직적인 범죄가 될 수도 있고 뭐 공갈의 의미로도 볼 수 있습니다. 여기서는 도널드 트럼프 전 대통령과 그 주변의 측근들이 함께 어떤 이제 불법 행위를 했다라는 의미로 볼 수 있겠죠. 그게 이제 뭔지는 구체적으로 잠시 후에 더 들어보겠습니다만 헤드라인에도 나와 있다시피 조지아주의 투표 결과 그때 이제 가까스로 트럼프 전 대통령이 거기서 졌거든요. 패배했어요. 그걸 뒤집으려고 하는 그런 불법 행위가 있었다라는 혐의입니다.
Argentina's far-right libertarian candidate, Javier Milei, has received the highest share of votes in the country's primary election, exceeding expectations by winning 30% of votes ahead of more established politicians.
아르헨티나의 대선 예비 선거에서 극우파인 진보자유 소속 하비에르 밀레이 하원 의원이 30%의 득표율을 기록해 기성 정치인들을 제치고 1위를 차지했습니다. Alright, well we looked at this expression recently and now it's in a headline. It's to exceed expectations.
Right. That means he did better than people expected or what people thought. If you exceed something, you go over that.
Yeah.
Right? So, sometimes you can exceed a spending limit. For example, if you spend too much on your credit card, you might exceed your limit.
그렇죠. 예상을 뛰어넘을 때 exceed expectations라고 하고요. And the number one position that he won was ahead of more established politicians.
So when you talk about someone being established in their position, it means they've been doing it for a long time, so they're well known to be doing that position. It just means you've been doing it for a long time. You got a lot of experience.
A long career in
Yes.
a certain field.
Exactly. And you can use it in any field.
Sure. 그렇죠. 어떤 분야든지 간에 그 일을 꽤 오랫동안 커리어를 탄탄하게 쌓아온 사람한테 an established 뭐뭐뭐라고 얘기할 수 있습니다. 그래서 그런 이제 오랫동안 정치를 해온 그런 기성 정치인들을 제치고 이번에 예비 선거인데요. 거기서 1위를 한 밀레이 후보 얘기입니다.
Flights serving the eastern Sicilian city of Catania in Italy were halted after an eruption from nearby Mount Etna, according to local authorities, creating chaos among travelers just a day before the country's biggest national holiday.
이탈리아 시칠리아 섬 동부에 위치한 에트나 화산이 분화해 항공기 운항이 중단되는 등 이탈리아 최대 공휴일을 하루 앞두고 여행객들이 혼란을 겪었다고 현지 당국이 전했습니다. Flights serving 라는 표현이 나오는데요.
Right. Flights serving any area means flights go to and from that place.
어디를 취항하는 항공편. Flights serving 어디. 자, 그다음에 created chaos.
Chaos. It caused a lot of confusion and disorder. Nobody quite knew what was happening.
네.
Flights were delayed. So, yeah, it was probably quite a chaotic scene there. I can
맞아요.
imagine.
이 혼란을 뜻하는 단어 영어 발음은 chaos가 되겠습니다.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan will launch a series of initiatives on technology and defense when the country's leaders gather at Camp David this Friday, according to Reuters, quoting senior U.S. government officials speaking on condition of anonymity.
한국, 미국, 일본이 오는 금요일 미국 대통령 별장인 캠프 데이비드에서 열리는 3국 정상회의에서 기술 및 방위와 관련한 일련의 구상을 발표할 것이라고 로이터 통신이 익명의 미국 정부 고위 당국자들을 인용해 보도했습니다. 자, 일단 모일 것이다라는 표현을 볼게요. 우리가 최근에 배웠던 convene 같은 걸 쓸 수도 있어요. 근데 여기서는 gather를 썼네요.
Gather, get together. People, usually that's what you would say casually with friends. Hey, let's get together. Let's meet up here.
Yeah.
But what you're doing when you meet up is you're gathering.
그렇죠. 모이는 것을 gather라고 하고 이제 at가 나왔으니까 뭐 어디 in this case gather at Camp David. Depending on where it is you're meeting, that word can change. You could gather inside a building.
Sure.
Or gather, I don't know, in Seoul.
Sure.
So then in this case it's a specific location.
Right, exactly.
자, 그다음에 on condition of anonymity.
So anonymity, you can look at that word and you might have heard the word anonymous. So if someone is anonymous, no one knows who they are.
Right.
So people, so a lot of times government officials, they'll speak to the media, but there's a condition. They'll only do it if they can remain anonymous.
Exactly.
So the journalist doesn't print their name.
그렇죠. On condition of anonymity, 익명을 조건으로 여러 가지 이제 정보를 제공한 미국 고위 당국자들, 그들을 인용해서 로이터 통신이 이렇게 보도를 한 겁니다.
Hawaii Governor Josh Green has said that as many as 200 bodies could be recovered over the next 10 days as search crews go street by street through the historic town of Lahaina, scorched by wildfires.
조시 그린 하와이 주지사는 화재로 불탄 유서 깊은 라하이나 지역을 수색대가 자세히 수색해 들어감에 따라 앞으로 열흘에 걸쳐 사망자 수가 200명에 달할 수도 있다고 말했습니다. 이렇게 자세히 수색하는 거를요, go street by street라고 했습니다.
One by one, they're going to start here
Yeah.
and then look at this street, see how many bodies they can recover, and then go to the next street, and then go to the next street.
Yep.
It's a horrible situation. The footage from Hawaii is it's tragic.
네, 거리를 하나 수색한다라는 의미입니다. Go street by street.
Right, you can talk about, say you're studying, you go page by page,
Yeah.
for example.
그렇죠. If you're eating, you could go dish by dish.
Dish by dish, bite by bite.
Bite by bite. 자, 그래요. 자, 그다음에는 this town has been scorched.
Burnt. Just totally burnt. And it's very historic. Some of these buildings are so old.
Yeah.
So it's, very, very sad situation there.
그래요. 불로 탔다라는 의미죠. 그리고 여름에 it's a scorcher 이렇게 말하면 너무 더워 이런 의미인데 여기선 진짜 타버린 그런 상황입니다.
Very hot. When you hear scorch, you can think of burnt.
Exactly.
Right? If you're at the restaurant and you leave your samgyeopsal or your galbi on the flame for too long, if it turns black, this is scorched.
Yeah.
We shouldn't eat this.
Exactly.
Power has been restored in most of Brazil after a major blackout left much of the north and northeast regions without electricity for nearly 6 hours, according to the country's energy ministry.
브라질 에너지 광산부는 대규모 정전 사태로 브라질 북부 및 북동부 지역 대부분에 6시간 가까이 전력 공급이 중단되는 일이 있었다면서 현재는 대부분 복구됐다고 발표했습니다. Okay, well, power has now, or since, been restored.
Brought back. So if you restore something, you return it to its original condition. It's kind of that's the definition of it. So you will use it with power when there's power outages. Once they fix the problem, then they say power's been restored. We often use it for old buildings or cars, boats, even paintings. When something's old and been damaged, it gets repaired and then it looks like it did originally.
네, 복구되다, restored. Power has been restored는 전력 공급이 복구됐다는 거고요. What was the major blackout?
It's when there's no electricity. All of a sudden, there's just no electricity. Power, street lights go out and no one has power in their house. That happened where I grew up in Canada in maybe was it 2004, 5, something around then, early 2000s in the summertime. There was a major blackout, and it affected all of the city of Toronto, New York City as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but it was.
I think so, yeah.
And I was like working at the time, and we were in a truck, and all of a sudden the street lights were just out.
그런 일이 있었군요. Major, 대규모, blackout, 정전이 되겠습니다. Another word for that would be a power outage.
Power outage, right. YouTube has announced a new policy for combating medical misinformation on the video sharing platform, which includes the removal of content that contradicts well-established guidance from health officials about topics such as COVID-19 and cancer.
유튜브가 코로나19나 암과 같은 주제에 대해 보건당국의 확립된 지침과 모순되는 내용을 담은 콘텐츠를 삭제하는 등 의료 관련 거짓 정보를 퇴출하기 위한 새로운 정책을 내놓았습니다. 자, 이런 의료 관련된 거짓 정보, medical misinformation.
So this would be incorrect information. So when we talk about misinformation, there's the idea that it's not always intentional. Like disinformation is intentional, whereas misinformation, people just might have the wrong information and then they spread it.
이렇게 생각하시면 될 것 같아요. 우리가 이제 누군가를 디스한다라고 하면은 아주 악의적이잖아요. 의도적이고. 그러니까 disinformation이라는 건 처음부터 의도를 가지고 거짓 정보를 퍼뜨리는 것이고요. mistake 할 때처럼 miss가 붙었을 때는 의도적이 아닐 수도 있어요. 뭐 몰라서 누군가가 그렇대 라고 해가지고 이제 그 거짓 정보를 퍼뜨리는 걸 수도 있거든요. 그런 걸 포함하는 게 misinformation입니다. medical misinformation, 의료 관련된 어쨌든 이제 허위 정보, 거짓 정보. What about well-established guidance?
So this would be guidance, meaning advice or information from health officials, right? And when we say well-established, it means that there are like it's not just one person saying it.
Yeah.
Many health officials, organizations, they all have the same opinion on something.
Exactly. Yesterday we had the expression established politicians.
Yes.
And that means they have a long career, you know, they've been in politics for a long time.
People know them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
그래요. 어제는 사람에 관해서 established politicians라고 했죠. 그러니까 그 커리어가 상당히 길고 그다음에 정치에 대해서 잘 알고 있는 그런 이제 기존에 있었던 기성 정치인들이라는 의미였다면 오늘은 이제 well established라는 것은 잘 확립이 돼 있다라는 얘기입니다. 뭐 한 의료 전문가가 얘기한 게 아니고요. 많은 전문가들이 같이 이제 한 목소리를 내서 이러이러하다라고 하는 그런 지침들, 확립된 지침. 거기에 모순되는 내용이 만약에 유튜브에 올라오면 유튜브에서 알아서 자체적으로 삭제하겠다라는 내용이에요.
K-pop hit songs have become shorter this summer, with industry sources pointing to New Jeans' latest chart topper, Super Shy, which clocks in at just 2 minutes and 34 seconds.
길이가 2분 34초에 불과한 뉴진스의 최신 히트곡 슈퍼샤이에서 보듯 올여름 K-pop 히트곡 노래 길이가 전보다 더 짧아진 것으로 나타났습니다. And this is according to industry sources.
That means people who work in the industry. If you see industry source, so it could be any industry.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times when they say industry sources, sometimes these people are also speaking on condition of anonymity on certain topics. So this one, I don't think this would be something people are worried about,
Right.
you know, being anonymous about. But yeah, any kind of industry source, people who work in the industry.
네. 업계의 소식통이라는 의미로 볼 수 있겠고요. 뉴스는 항상 보면은 이제 누군가가 이렇게 말했다라는 걸 인용을 하거나 이제 전할 때 누가 말했는지 반드시 출처를 밝혀야 되잖아요. 그 출처가 소스입니다. 영어로 그렇게 표현을 하고요. industry sources니까 업계에서 뭐 이런 걸 잘 아는 정통한 그런 사람들, 소식통들에 의하면 뭐 이러이러하다. 자, 그리고 2분 34초밖에 안 되는 노래를 이렇게 표현했어요. Super Shy clocks in at just 2 minutes and 34 seconds.
That means how long it is, the running time. So when you think of a clock, that's how you tell the time.
Right.
So something clocks in at, you can guess that, okay, it's probably something to do with the time. So we would usually say like a song clocks in at a certain time, an album clocks in at a certain time, or even movies.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you know, long movies, like, oh, that movie clocks in at 3 hours.
Korea's import prices rose in July, largely due to the higher price of crude oil, according to preliminary data from the central bank.
한국은행이 발표한 자료에 따르면 지난달 국제유가 상승 등의 영향으로 전반적인 수입 제품의 가격이 상승한 것으로 나타났습니다. 그러면은요, 첫 번째 표현으로 우리 원유 한번 봐야 되겠죠. Let's have a look at crude oil.
Yes, so crude oil is unprocessed oil. It's oil that comes out of the ground as it is, not been touched at all. So crude here means unprocessed, but crude can also have two other meanings. One is that it's a bit rough, not very well made, and the other, Sue, is rude. We talk about crude language, for example, or a crude joke is something that might offend people.
네, 그러니까 정제되지 않은, 다듬어지지 않은이라는 의미가 들어있기 때문에 기름 얘기를 할 때는 원유가 되겠지만요. 사람이 하는 말이 crude하다. 그러면은 잘 다듬어지지 않고 심지어는 좀 무례할 수도 있고요. 예, 조금 좀 말을 좀 예쁘게 하지. 왜 이렇게 crude하게 하나?
Yes.
이렇게 할 수 있겠죠.
Exactly. You'd never use crude language with your teacher or to your parents, for example.
그래요. Or to anyone.
Well, maybe to your close friends.
Maybe to your, 그러네요.
Yeah.
아주 친한 친구한테는 조금 거칠게 얘기해도 괜찮죠. 그렇지만 대체적으로는 이게 crude language 쓰면은 별로 좋진 않죠. Alright, so crude. 자, 그다음에 preliminary data.
Yes, so data being the information we're getting, and if it's preliminary, that means it's the early data, or it's the data, the first set of data before we get all the information we need. So if something is preliminary, it's happening before the main event, as it were.
여기서 말하는 preliminary data라는 거는 어떤 초기 데이터, 예비 데이터 이런 느낌이 될 수 있고요. 스포츠에서 축구 같은 경우는 prelims라고 하면은 예선전이 되겠습니다.
I've learned something new today. I don't follow sports, so that's new to me.
네, 영국 사람들은 대부분 축구 정말 좋아하는데 우리 예외적으로 축구보다 책을 더 좋아하시는
Yes.
폴 선생님.
Sorry to all the football fans out
That's
there.
fine. That's why we have people like Shakespeare and all the great writers and
Who does Shakespeare play for? Manchester United?
넘어가겠습니다.
The United States has condemned Russia's continued attacks on Ukraine's grain infrastructure and said it was working with partners to identify alternative options to ensure Ukrainian grain exports.
러시아가 우크라이나의 곡물 수출항을 지속적으로 공격하자 미국은 이를 비난하고 우크라이나 곡물 수출을 보장하기 위해 대체 경로 모색에 나섰습니다. 야, 그러니까요, 지금 미국이 우리가 어떤 대안이 있을까 이걸 좀 고민하고 있는 거잖아요. 혼자 하는 건 아니고요. With partners.
Yes.
파트너가 누굴까요?
Well, the people they're working with. In the same way that if you're working on a project in school, maybe in science class, you work with a partner, perhaps.
Yeah.
The two of you are working together. So we use this term partner when talking about countries that are working together. I mean, we also talk about allies, or we talk about, friendships, or whatever it may be, depending on the country, depending on the relationship. In this case, it's we're working on something together, so it's a partnership.
Yeah.
We are working as partners.
Exactly. 파트너. 교실에서 책상 옆에 앉아 있는 짝꿍도 파트너가 될 수 있고 여기서 말하는 미국과 다른 협력 국가도 파트너가 될 수가 있고 기업과 기업 간에도 이제 협력 관계에 있으면 파트너가 될 수 있죠. And then there's this expression. Partner in crime.
Oh dear.
What does this mean?
Well, this can either be a fun expression or a very serious one.
Yeah.
If we take it literally, your partner in crime is your fellow criminal. You're doing a crime together.
Yeah,
However,
that's not fun.
the
Yeah.
fun meaning of it is when you're doing something a little bit sneaky or a little bit risky or a little
Right.
bit, I don't know, out of the ordinary. It's the person you do it with.
네. 그러니까 이 partner in crime이라는 표현이 아주 귀엽게 재밌게 쓰일 때가 많아요.
네.
말 그대로 하면은 범죄를 같이 저지른 사람이죠. 그러니까 굉장히 끔찍한 무서운 표현이 될 수 있지만 재미있게 표현했을 때는요. 단짝, 짝꿍 아니면은 방송할 때도 보면은 이렇게 정말 호흡이 너무나 잘 맞는 두 진행자가 있을 수 있어요. 그러면은 영어식으로 표현할 때 they are partners in crime 이렇게 표현해도 돼요.
Exactly. Yes, so if we look at the show that's before us, you have two partners in crime talking about English
Yeah.
expressions.
Kristen and Cameron.
Exactly. They're very much partners in crime. Very cheeky.
Well, today, I think you and I We are partners in crime.
You are my partner in crime. It's true. Every Friday and Sunday.
그렇습니다. 이렇게 정말 그 케미도 좋다고 해야 될까요? 뭐 하여튼 호흡이 좋고 그다음에 그런 이런 파트너십가 잘 이루어지는 사람들을 이렇게 재미있게 표현할 수도 있어요. 자, partner 받고 그다음에 identifying alternative options.
Yes, if we're identifying something, we're finding it, we're spotting it. And alternative options is something different, a different method, a different way to make sure that Ukraine can export its grain.
그래요. Identify alternative options는 어떤 대체 경로를 모색하는 거를 말합니다.
The New York Times has reported that Google is working on AI that is capable of performing at least 21 different types of personal and professional tasks, including tools to give users life advice, ideas, planning instructions, and tutoring tips.
구글이 개인 생활 코치 AI를 개발 중에 있으며 이 AI는 이용자에게 생활 조언과 아이디어를 제공하고 계획에 대한 지침과 개인 학습에 대한 팁을 주는 등 21가지 이상의 개인 및 전문 작업을 수행할 수 있는 것으로 전해졌습니다. 자, 지금 개발 중에 있는 더 스마트해진 AI 얘기예요. 그래서 life advice를 줄 수 있다. Wow, what is life advice?
Always stay hydrated, Sue. No matter how little you want to drink water, you can always drink a little more. That's my life advice for you today.
살아가는 데 필요한 그런 생활 팁을 주는 AI군요.
Yeah, so life advice is bits of tips or little hints about how to live your life well.
와우, 오케이. 그리고 이것도 제공할 수 있을 거라고 하는데 tutoring tips.
Yes, how to tutor, how to teach someone would be a tutoring tip. A tutor is somebody who teaches someone else. Usually we talk about a private tutor, for example. So here, a tutoring tip can mean giving you advice on how to tutor someone, or maybe giving you advice on how to study would be the other way to read it.
아, 그래요. 이 tutoring이라는 게 과외의 의미로 참 많이 쓰거든요, 영어로는. 그러니까 이제 어떤 학습이라고 우리가 좀 폭넓게 봅시다. 그렇다면은 가르칠 때 이렇게 하면 좋겠다라는 팁을 주는 게 될 수도 있고요. 아니면 배울 때 이러면 좋다 하는 팁이 될 수도 있겠죠. 스승이 될 수도 있고 학생이 될 수도 있는 거니까. 자, 이런 걸 다 AI가 제공할 수 있을 거라고요.
A dolphin was spotted courageously carrying her lifeless calf on her back in waters off Jeju Island, leaving onlookers deeply moved.
네. 제주도 앞바다에서 숨진 새끼 돌고래를 등에 업고 헤엄치는 어미 돌고래가 목격돼 보는 이들을 뭉클하게 했습니다. 먼저 표현 볼게요. Courageously doing something.
Yeah. So courage is that sense of bravery of doing something that is dangerous or difficult and doing it without fear or not hesitating. When we use it for grief, we talk about someone carrying on despite being in grief, despite mourning the loss of someone, maybe their partner, or in this case, their baby. So it's used very often. Bravery and courage are the two words that we associate when we talk about someone struggling through grief and yet still managing to deal with it.
그렇죠. 어떤 용맹함을 얘기할 때는 brave를 좀 더 쓴다면은 여기선 사실 굉장히 마음 아픈 일이에요. 아기 돌고래를 어미 돌고래가 이렇게 들고 아기가 이제 숨 쉬지 않고 있었다고 합니다. 그런 상황에서 말하는 용기는 용맹은 아니죠. 그러니까 어떻게 보면은 상당히 가슴 아픈 그런 상황인데 그걸 여기서는 이제 courageously carrying이라고 했습니다. 용감하게 등에 업고 있는 어미 돌고래 얘기. 자, 그 다음에는 leave people moved, leave onlookers moved.
Yeah, if we're moved, we are emotionally affected, meaning we're feeling touched or we're feeling sad or we're feeling some deep emotion. We talk about a movie moves us or a moving movie, meaning it emotionally affects us. And this expression to leave one more means that is the result of it. For example, the movie left me in tears.
Yeah.
Or the movie left me feeling disturbed. We can use this meaning we are affected by the thing in this way.
Exactly. touched 하고 moved 하고 다 감동받았다라는 얘기인데요. 보통 I'm so moved 이렇게 얘기할 수도 있고 this left me moved 할 수도 있고요. 아니면은 this is very moving.
Yes.
이렇게 얘기할 수도 있겠죠. 자, moved나 touched나 마찬가지로 감동받는 걸 얘기합니다.
BTS member Jungkook's single Seven has notched its fourth week atop both the Billboard Global 200 and Global excluding US charts.
네, 그룹 방탄소년단의 멤버 정국의 솔로 데뷔 싱글 Seven이 미국 빌보드 글로벌 200 그리고 미국 데이터를 빼고 집계한 글로벌 차트에서 동시에 1위를 차지했습니다. 네, 4주 연속 1위를 이렇게 두 차트에서 달성한 정말 대단한 기록을 세웠어요. 2편부터 보겠습니다. Seven has notched its fourth week. The song Seven.
Yeah, meaning it's done it. It's achieved it. We use the word notch when we're sort of making a mark, when we're counting off something. I like to think of Robinson Crusoe on the
yeah.
desert island, putting notches in the tree for the number of days he survived. So when we use it as a verb, it's used for some kind of achievement in sports or in entertainment, meaning they've done it. They've managed to do it. And again, for the fourth week.
네, 여기서 notch라는 동사는 달성하다를 뜻합니다. 그래서 정국의 싱글 이 Seven이라는 노래가 벌써 지금 4주째 빌보드 글로벌 200하고 글로벌 excluding US 차트에서 1위를 달성했다. 1위라는 표현이 직접적으로 나오진 않아요. There's no mentioning of number one here, but instead it says atop.
Yes, ATOP, meaning on the top. If something is atop the charts, it is number one. It is at the very top. You can be atop a mountain. Maybe some people this weekend will be going hiking. And when they get atop the mountain, they'll take a photo and say, what a
right.
beautiful view.
Yeah, so another way of saying on top of would be to use just one word, atop.
Yes.
ATOP.